Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Clangin and Bangin with Mikey, episode 223. And I don't know about y'all, but man, yesterday's WrestleMania was actually pretty cool, bro. I wasn't expecting uh Jey Uso to tap Gunther out to his own submission move. That was interesting. Uh, I wasn't expecting Jacob Fought too to win the United States Championship. That was interesting as well. You know, I didn't get a chance to watch any hoops yesterday, but me and one of my partners came through, and we been working on some music, and we finally got the joint finished, and so yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool, man. It's definitely gonna be something that's gonna be really cool to really cool to see. So one thing about it, I can understand why guys love being in studios, love being around creative people, love being around people who share the same zest for music as they do, right? Um, and that's the case, man. It's like at the end of the day, like that's what it is. You don't get into music just to work by yourself. You don't get into music just to not be creative. I don't care what it is. Because if you're learning something new and you're doing new things, and it's like, yeah, it's fun. Um, I don't care what anybody tells you. Making music is fun. But yeah, like I said, I haven't watched any hoops yet. I think the Knicks won, so that's always good for basketball. I have to go back. I have to go look at what else popped off yesterday. Um, but yeah, in this episode, man, is like what we gonna talk about, bruh, is like I don't know why, but most of my friends they come to me and they tell me about their relationship problems. Frankly, because I'm probably the dude who stays out of relationships or out of the drama that most relationships come with, right? Um, I got a couple friends of mine, loving to death, you know, good, solid people. Um, but you ever realize that you're over benefiting the situation by you staying in it? Um, and that's what I told him. I was like, bro, it's like, do you listen to when you talk, or do you just like not hear yourself? And they're like, what you mean? I was like, all this shit you just listed. Oh yeah, all this shit you just listed. Like, do you hear yourself? Because if you heard yourself, you wouldn't put up with this shit, right? And it's interesting how people will sit there and listen to your problems and have all these answers to your shit, but they can't seem to have the same answers to their shit. And I'm like, yeah, it's like, no, it's because it's like, yo, this is what you're doing, this is what you should be doing, and X, Y, and Z. I don't understand certain people. It's like I know people like they get into these relationships with these people, and I kid you not, the guy would say, I don't want to get married in the very beginning, and the woman would still try to date his ass to change his mind, and you end up breaking up 3-4 years later. But you knew from the very beginning that he didn't want to get married. I've literally seen people do that. I've literally seen them waste time and waste years with people who do that. I mean, not the other person's wasting their time, but at the same time, it's like, or like, I've seen people get married and never talk about having kids, and then you find out that that they don't want kids. Now you've been married 3, 4, 5 years, and you keep asking for kids, and he's like, "No, I'm not getting you pregnant." You know, I've literally had people come to me and ask me, "Oh, can you talk to so and so for me? why he doesn't want to have any kids. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that because that's your husband. And number two, I wouldn't want my business out in the street like that. And it's clear if he's not listening to you, he's not going to listen to anybody else. And plus, it's like, nobody has the right to ask anybody, oh, what, man? How come you don't want any kids, bro? Getting married, yeah, that's one thing. You know, if somebody tells you from Jump Street, I don't want to get married, and you still try, and you still all go off and you develop a relationship with them, and it's like, that's on you, you know? That's 100% on you. Because I've seen people, get married 6 months after leaving a 3-year relationship. I kid you not. Why? Because the other person knows what they want. You know, and the other person is not willing to waste their time. It's like I've seen people get married within 6 months and have a kid with, you know, a year and a half later. Yeah. People gotta stop pretending that like they have to wait around for this other person to get it. Or they have to wait around for this other person to, you know, see their worth. I'm like, no, it's like either they rocking with you or they're not. It's like stop pretending that they have to in some strange way that they have to know, you know, that they have to have everything figured out. It's like, no, it's like, oh, I've seen people in situations for 5, 6 years complain about, you know, have conversations about getting married and never really take any steps to get married. You know, like, I've seen people, like, they don't live together, you know, and then you find all the financial shit, like, you know, like, they can't handle anything financially, you know, their other half or them themselves. Or it's like, you don't know anything about their financial history, you know, and all this other shit. And I'm like, okay, you're saying that you wanted the shit, you know, and he's saying that he wants to give it to you, but that's all it is. It's just words. It's like, stop looking at it for what you want it to be and start looking at it for what it is. It's like, if this individual wanted you to be in that particular way, you know, he would make you an honest woman, or vice versa, you know. And that's what it is. It's like after a while, like, you just kind of realize that it's all talk, you know. And you don't want to end up in these relationships where it's like it's all talk for 10, 15, 20 years. It's like, I've literally seen people do that. I've literally seen people waste decades on an individual that they thought, you know, that they thought they knew. And it's like, all you did was waste all this time, you know. Or I've seen people take back a significant other multiple times after their significant other had cheated on them. I'm like, and then they want to complain about how they're treated. I'm like, but you stayed. What are you talking about? You know? Like, you stayed in this situation. So obviously you thought this shit was going to get better, or you were just too naive to realize that it wasn't. And that's the sad part. It was like, a lot of these women that I run into, they're beautiful, but they're stupid. You know, they walk around jaded. They walk around blaming the other person or not knowing how to accept accountability for their role in the situation. And then they want to be like, oh, you know, well, X, Y, Z, well, yada, yada, he did this or he did that. But yeah, like, I get it. But you're the one who stayed. You're the one who put up with all the bullshit, hoping that he would change. And it's like, what does that prove? That just proves that you're just willing to stay stuck in a situation when you're giving all the signs, you know, all the vibes, or, you know, if you're religious, because it is Easter Sunday, that God is giving you all these red flags, or how Trip Fontaine once poetically said it so poetically. He said, "Man, he's like, just because you got a few green flags doesn't make up for the fact that you're in a field of red flags." And it's true. People be like, "Oh, but he does this or he does that." Yeah, he may do 2, 3, 4 things great, but what about everything else? Yeah. And it's not you being a dick. It's not you being disrespectful. At the same time, it's like, um, it's like that's what it is, bro. It's like, um, you don't like you don't get brownie points for staying in the situation that you know you should have left. And that's what it is. It's like a lot of people will sit there and be like, "Well, I did X, Y, and Z, this, yada, 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 boom, boom, boom." It wasn't like, no, it just wasn't enough because this person wasn't. They just didn't want you, you know. And in every situation is like that, right? Every situation is like that. You know, you like, and me myself, you know, my past situations, you know, whether it's an actual relationship or whether it's a situationship or whether it's that gray area between, okay, we're more than friends, obviously, but we're less than actual lovers, you know, because there's something going on. And I think once you muddle the lines between, you know, what actually is a friendship and what actually is a relationship, because to me, once you throw in sex in this situation, you can't go back, you know. Everybody talks about all situationships, this and this, and I was like, no, like you just want the benefits of everything else, you know, except the commitment, and that's fine. You can want that, but it doesn't mean the other person has to stick around for that. And I think a lot of people will try to manipulate that in a way to make it seem like, oh, but I told you in the very beginning. Yeah, in the very beginning, but that was before you were sucking my soul out through my dick. But but other than that, yeah. Or it was like when people come at you, which is highly sexually charged, energy, and in the very end, towards the very end, they'll complain about it. I'm like, but yo, this is what you wanted. If you wanted something different, you should have said something different. Because a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, like, I didn't know what you did. No, like, you have a mouth, you have a brain. If you wanted to be treated better, you should have spoke up, you know? But at the same time, if all you're doing is the physical aspect of it, then it doesn't matter. Like, nothing else, like, if you're not spending time with this person or going out and doing regular things, like, going out to eat or, I'm not even saying catching a movie, but it's like, if all you doing, if they're showing up to your crib or you going over to theirs or whatever it is, and it's like, you just look at it and you're like, yeah, this shit ain't it. Because it's not. And I think that's the worst thing that people can do is like they trick themselves into thinking like this is more than what it is. And yeah, I mean, people will trick themselves into thinking that it's more than what it is, and it's like then they want to get hurt by it. Like, you can't. How are you gonna get mad about it when you were feeding into the energy? How are you gonna get mad about it when you're the one, to quote, one of my good friends, you're feeding into the energy, and then you throw up because you can't handle it. And it's true. It's like a lot of people will sit there and say X, Y, and Z, but in reality, yo, it's not everybody else, it's you. I think that it's a shame that most people get divorced, but in actuality, a lot of people probably should have never gone out past date number 1, or all this shit that that we do in relationships shows up in the end. Um, and a lot of times people will let their insecurities, their doubt, their bullshit just cloud their judgment, you know. And there's nothing you can do to solve that because it's like, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna just like and be like, oh, X, Y, and Z, boom, 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 boom. Like me, myself, I know for myself, it's like when I'm in a relationship, like the sexual energy I have is insane. You know, it's like I don't have to get laid every day, but it'd be nice if I did. You know, yeah. Of course, I want to do X, Y, and Z. You know, I want to take my girl out to every other venue that that we can afford to go to. I want to, I want to do all this shit, but I also want to rock her world too in the bed, and vice versa. You know, and that's just me being a healthy, you know, young male. You know, now do I think about sex 24/7? I'd be lying to you if I didn't. You know, but is it on the forefront of my brain? No, it's not. You know, and there's a difference between being sexually disciplined and just having no sexual discipline. It's like you've been around the dudes who have no sexual discipline, by how they talk, how they carry themselves, how they do X, Y, and Z. Because there are some guys I know married, you know, stepping on their wives, stepping on their girlfriends. I mean, well, obviously they're not girlfriends if they're if they're married. But yeah, you get my point. And a lot of the times people will try to justify their actions. And I just look at it like, yo, like, okay, because there's always going to be somebody attractive, physically attractive. There's always going to be a girl who has a fatter ass than your girl, you know. There's always going to be a girl who just has a better body shape than your girl. There's always going to be a girl who has bigger tits, a nicer face, better facial features. But at the end of the day, they nice to look at, but obviously they're not your girl. You know? And it's simple as that. And it's the same thing with us. It's like there's always gonna be a dude out there who's taller, makes more money, you know, is more handsome than, than us. You know? Aesthetically looks better. But at the end of the day, they're not us. You know? And that's what makes us different, man. It's like, and I think that's important to realize that. I'm not saying that it's okay to cheat, it's okay to step out, because it's not. I don't care what the situation is. I do not give a flying fuck. If you cheat, no, there's nothing you can tell me that would justify that. Nothing at all. And I think that's the most disrespectful thing you can do to somebody, you know? Especially if you taking vows, right? You know? If you're taking vows and you're doing some foul shit like that, then nah, you like, I'm not religious by any means, but it's like you definitely gotta do some soul searching for that. Because it's like that's not cool. And I think on this Easter Sunday, like the more and more I get older, like the more I realize, man, there's like a lot of people, they ain't happy, you know. They're not happy with what they got going on in their life. They're not happy with everything they have going on, their direction. And it's like, again, all my friends call me for, to vent and to take my advice. I had a friend tell exactly that, and I'm like, and then they're blaming their other half, and I'm like, no, you can't blame your other half, because it's like you're the one choosing to still be in the situation. It's like you have to take accountability and responsibility for your lack of action. If you feel that your life is not going in a way that you wanted to go in because of X, Y, and Z, then change that. But don't blame him. Blame yourself. Because nobody, like nobody forced you to be in a relationship with a guy who just can't get it together. Now, there's a difference between struggling and, struggling to get to where you want to go, and not doing anything to fix your current situation. If you're with a guy or a girl who's struggling to get to where they want to go, but they have a vision of what they want to do, and they have that overall they just have something that, like, they have that it factor, right? That you can work with 25-8. It's the people that don't want to do anything, that want to blame everybody else. Those are the ones you have to leave alone, because those are the ones that will drain you, and that will come to you with all the problems and no solutions. And that's what I told her. I was like, nah, it's like you can't blame him. Like, how is that his fault when you're the one choosing to be in the situation? And she was like, what? I was like, yeah. I was like, you're choosing to be in this situation, but yet you blaming him. Nobody's stopping you from leaving except you. And granted, yeah, do I want to go out there back in the fucking streets and be like, hey, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food type of shit? I ain't trying to do all that. But at the same time, I'm also not going to waste my time in a situation where I don't see a future. I'm not going to waste somebody else's time where I don't see a future with them. And I don't mean just financially. I mean emotionally, psychologically, sexually, everything. When I say future, I mean everything, And a lot of people, they rather sit there and be like, oh, well, X, Y, and Z, all this other shit. And I'm like, no, it's like, it's cool, it's whatever, But if you stay in a situation like that, you have to understand that you're responsible for your shit too. Like, you don't get to nitpick, what you want or what you don't want, you know what I mean? And you don't get to complain about what they don't have. Because after a while, you know what you're dealing with. After a while, you know exactly what the situation is. After a while, you know that it's your fault for staying in that situation, It's like when girls get on social media and they say all this bad shit about their baby daddies, ex-husbands, all this other shit. And the only thing I think about is like, but you stayed in that situation. So what about your responsibility for staying in a situation where you know you wasn't respected, you know you wasn't valued, you know you wasn't, protected in any way, but yet you want to sit there and play victim, and you can't. And it's usually the girls whose face cards are just super pretty. Because like I said, a lot of these girls I know are drop dead gorgeous. But a lot of them lack the common sense to understand, and it's like, it's your responsibility too to get off the ride. And if you don't get off the ride, then what's that tell you? You don't have the luxury of staying on the ride and complaining that the ride sucks. You don't have the luxury of putting somebody else first, whether it's a man or a woman, because women do this shit too to men. You don't have the luxury of complaining how bad the ride is when you're still on the ride voluntarily. I'm gonna say it again. If you're still on the ride voluntarily, you have no right to complain. Because that means, you can get off the ride. I'm gonna wrap this up with one last thing. I remember in my early 20s, I was on some dating app. I think it was OkCupid or whatever it was, right? So I was on OkCupid, matched with a couple of girls. Went out with a few of them. Simple. coffee dates, whatever. Because number one, I'm in college, and number two, like, I'm not buying you a free meal. What the fuck? Like, niggas ain't doing that. I mean, I can afford that now, but back then I couldn't. Anyway, so me and this girl meet up, and maybe she was put off because I have a physical disability or whatever it was, but she was cool, you know, because when you make your profile, you have to list everything, right? So I'm assuming maybe she didn't read my profile fully. I don't know. So we get off, you know, we meet up at this coffee spot, have a cup of coffee, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. And then when I left, I said, oh, so, maybe it was a little longer, I forget. But like I said, this was like probably like 15 years ago, at this point. And so I said, okay, cool. I said, hey, I'll text you when I get home. She said, okay, cool. And so we left, we went our separate ways. And I said, hey, I had a really nice time today, maybe we can do it again sometime. And she's like, hey, like, that sounds great, but but I have to politely decline because I'm not interested. Okay, cool. And I can respect that a lot more than somebody just using your time and just abusing you in a way just to have you feel comfortable or to make them feel wanted because they have the attention, right? I much rather respected that girl for doing that because most women will sit there and use up your time, your money, your resources, and you're like, what the fuck, but like, no, it's like, nigga, just keep it moving. It's like, don't get so upset, don't get so out of pocket that, you can't think straight, right? Like, there's a reason why ego stands for ego. The word ego is an acronym for emotions going overboard, because if you let your emotions go overboard, be like, hey, well, I did X, Y, and Z. Okay, cool, but nobody asked you. Think about it that way. And I can't remember the girl's name, but I will always remember that interaction. And she's like, hey, you know what? I wish you the best in your search, and thank you for your time. And that was that. And there was another girl who I took out for a couple of dates. Actually, no, we didn't. Well, no, we had planned a few dates, but it just never happened. And I just ended up stop talking to her because, it was clear that she wasn't gonna physically go out with me. So I figured, okay, whatever. But she told me something I'll never forget. She said, beauty fades, intelligence lasts a lifetime. And that's what I live by, man. It's like, everybody's a pretty face in it, in their 20s and 30s, Hell, some of them in their 40s. But it's gonna be a point in time when all them looks start to fade and everything starts to go by the wayside. It's like, yo, like, are you intelligent or are you just pretty? Because if you're just a pretty face, you ain't gonna last that long, man. You're not. Anyway, y'all, it's about 29 minutes of your life that y'all won't get back. Hope y'all keeping 4 P's, private, player, positive, and pushing. I'll see y'all next week. I love y'all. And like I always say, know your worth because you're better than what you are. I'll see y'all next week. Peace. All right, y'all. Have a beautiful Sunday. Happy Easter to everybody who out there celebrating. Yeah. All right, y'all. One love. Out.